We've had 65 guests across the 100 episodes that we've had on, and we appreciate every single one of them.
That's insane. Just like think about that. We had 65 different people share their stories.
Imagine 65 people in this room right now.
That'd be a really hot room.
Yeah.
You know what's cool about doing this podcast is that we get to meet like unique people through it
and connect with them. Like there's so many people we've had on the podcast that like I've either followed on social media or anything, and like they just, you know, sometimes I'll just be really proud of them. Like Julie, for example, who was aspiring to be a model, did her thing, and now she works with American Eagle. She's like living her dream, and
she's
feel
in
like
magazines.
New York Times Square.
Times Square. Yeah, she was on
New York Square.
She was on like
The billboard,
New York Times Square.
And we got her
before
she blew up, and that's so cool to me.
We got a few people before they blew up on here, and afterwards.
And afterwards.
Which I want to shout out to some of those people because of the top rated episodes that you guys love. The number one most viewed one on YouTube was actually "Can I Get a Sausage and Mushroom Pizza?"
That's so
which
funny.
featured Dominic Zaleski.
Yeah.
He was awesome. He came on.
He
after,
was like the meme dude.
Yeah. And it was cool, kind of like exploring what that is, like when somebody goes viral for one of their things, what goes on during the process, and how annoying it must be, you know, getting people who run into you and constantly ask for that one thing over and over. So he told us, you know, the people that reached out to him, those big social sites, and like the process of like, you know, him trying to get his other work out there while struggling to sort of just be this meme. And, you know, that was an incredible story. So we shout out to Dom. Another one was "She Went into Labor in My Classroom," which featured Mr. O from Baltimore.
That was so cool. We got him after he went on Ellen.
Yeah, that was like a news story that broke out. It was this guy who is helping out people from Baltimore.
Which, you know, shout out to teachers in Baltimore in general, because, you know, you obviously put a lot of time and effort, and we could really hear from his story especially that, you know, a lot of his own effort, time, money, everything goes into it, just to really make sure his students are safe, you know, that their home environments are okay, but also trying to get them on track with their education.
Yeah. And
so he gave us a good insight into that.
The Teach for America teachers especially, because he was coming from California, you know, he mentioned that he had this privileged background. He came here, and then he has to combat that and and like, you know, work with how the system is set up to break them out. And it was awesome because, again, like this was a news story that broke out. He was on Ellen, and I was watching that episode, and it was incredible. We were sharing it, and then we just thought, hey, like let's try to have him on the podcast. He came on, and it was so awesome that like
such a nice, humble dude,
nice guy.
And again, like another cool thing that we have the honor of doing on this podcast is going into depth. Because when you have shows like Ellen and these little
like
viral
quick
moments, they're quick. They have to say what they have to say. Get this sort of little thing out there. And again, he took us behind the scenes of how all of that went down and what the reality is.
He didn't expect to go on stage till they called him up.
Yeah,
and that was interesting to know.
And the thing is, like, you know, what happens after you go on Ellen? People don't know that, and he's still there doing his thing. The fame and everything washes out, and then, you know, you realize that these people are really heroes. So shout out to Mr. O. And we ran into him at Shake Shack, I think, a little while after that. That was awesome. Another one that we had that you guys loved was "The Questions Muslims Don't Talk About," which featured Mufti Saad. That was a really cool episode.
That was a Ramadan special.
Yeah. A lot of people had like so many questions they wanted answered, like Muslims, non-Muslims, and so hopefully they got them answered. But we asked a lot. And he knew a lot. And
that was awesome that we were able to talk about the things, again, like the title speaks for itself, but a lot of communities don't speak about the things that we were able to. We kept everything anonymous, and it was interesting to see what was on people's minds, and the acceptance and non you know, judgmental atmosphere that Mufti Saad set was awesome, because we were actually able to ask him all the questions that came in, and he took them like a champ. And, you know, he said, you know what, this is the reality, this is what the Muslim youth is thinking, let's address it. And so we appreciate Mufti Saad for doing that. Yeah. And then another guest, which actually brought SHAH-AMEER on after being a guest, as a co-host.
Guest co-host
that you guys really liked a lot, was the Pakistani Playboy, which featured our friend Labib Yasser.
Yeah.
And you remember how that went down, right?
Yeah, I think Labib was coming to Pennsylvania because he's from LA. And he was like, yo, I'm going to be in Pennsylvania, come through. And then Frost was like, yo, let's do a podcast. And I was like, yo, I'm down because I've never...
And y'all, like, hauled all the podcast equipment then, too, because we had a big setup back then.
Yeah. So we put all the stands and everything in the car, drove to 3 or 4 hours, 2 or 3
3 hours.
Something like that. And then in his hotel room that he was staying at, and we just did a podcast there.
And it was like a storm going on outside. Yeah. We met him. It was awesome. And it was like such a natural podcast. And it was actually one of the first ones, and I didn't like have to edit it at all, which felt really good because it was organic. Yeah. It felt authentic, and that kind of set the mood for going in the future. Like, hey, we should do it like this. Yeah. Like, and be prepared.
Yeah. And that was like our first time meeting him too.
Yeah.
So the fact that it was just so natural, it was like cool.
And you know, of course, my favorite part about it was Labib's story, which really you know, it was inspiring and motivational, and it was just him.
It was cool getting an insight after just knowing him like from the internet.
Yeah,
like from Fine Brothers React in his channel, and then actually hearing his story was really cool.
Yeah, you know, like being a teen, getting that like viral fame from the internet, and then struggling with his weight loss and the his mental health behind that. Yeah. So if you guys want to check that one out, or any of these, you know, I mentioned the titles, but all of the guests have been super interesting.